one of the things that's chief among all of the characteristics or descriptions that we might attribute to Ambassador Young is he's an educator, through how it is that he has lived his life, but also in his commitment to individuals and trying to find a better way for people to be free and to become enfranchised in this great American experiment of democracy. So Ambassador Young is here as part of the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership. He wanted to be in conversation with students here on Morehouse College's campus this year in particular. So this is the first of 3 conversations that he's agreed to be in. And so what we're going to do today is be in as casual a conversation as you can be with a hero. So Ambassador Young, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, let me start with where you all are. I mean, I was this year would have been my 70th year out of Howard University. And I really didn't do well. And well, my father was a dentist, and he wanted me to be a dentist all my life. And, pushed me in that direction. But I knew I wasn't going. But I loved my father, respected him, and wasn't strong enough to stand up to him. So here I got a college diploma, and I know I don't know anything. And on the way back, we stopped at Kings Mountain, North Carolina, because you couldn't stay in hotels in those days. This was 1951.
You say on your way back, that's after graduation. You're
After
coming.
graduation.
Okay.
We were driving back to New Orleans, my home, and we broke the trip up by stopping at a church conference in North Carolina at Kings Mountain. And I wasn't interested in that either. So I went out running. And you run in the hills and you tend to run too fast. But I was in very good shape because I was on the swimming team and the track team at Howard. And so I was training all year round. I decided to run to the top of this mountain and push myself to the point where I made it, but I could hardly breathe, couldn't breathe. And I might have even passed out. But when I woke up, the world just looked different to me. And didn't hear any voices, nobody told me anything. It's just that it hit me that everything I see has a purpose. And it's not a general purpose, it's a specific purpose. And so I reached the conclusion right there that everything I see, the cows, the corn, the trees, the clouds, everything I see can't have a purpose that's pretty well defined. I'd majored in biology and chemistry. And so I had a little understanding of what was going on out there. But everything had a purpose, and I realized how everything fit together. And I said, there can't be a purpose for everything on this planet but me. Mm-hmm. If there's a purpose for the cow, there's a purpose for me. See, and I didn't know what it was. And I came down from that mountain just feeling like I was all right.
So is that your compass that directed you to finding what your purpose was? Because you came down from the mountain, didn't know you knew you had a purpose, but didn't know what it was.
Didn't know what it was, didn't care what it was.
So how did you come upon?
No, I just said, I'll do the best I can one day at a time, and I'll find what my purpose is.
So this idea of being set on some sort of path, right? And things seem to be.
There was a movie I saw. The Howard Theater was near Howard, and you could see a movie and a band for 50 cents. I had just seen a movie about a young Englishman who shot a German in a foxhole in a World War I movie, all quiet on the Western Front. And when he caught up to advanced, he saw the guy that he'd killed, and he was holding a picture of his wife and children in his wallet, in his hand, and that was the last thing he saw. In dying, this other Englishman takes his wallet out, and his wife and children are just like the Germans. And I think that film said, let me know that war really doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's got to be a better way to solve problems. So things were happening to me on the way.
So how did we get to this sharp focus of you as a lieutenant in the civil rights struggle, right? A lieutenant with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. How did we get to you being a congressman? How did we get to you being a diplomat, to you being the mayor of Atlanta?
Basically, what I'm trying to sneak up on you and let you know that you don't belong to yourself. See, that somebody put you here for something, and that I came to this belief that there is a kind of a spirituality about life which gives it meaning and purpose, and it also gives you power and knowledge where you don't have it, and you know you're inadequate. And that's how it unfolded to me.
That taps directly into this Morehouse mission and orientation of being a servant leader.
That's right.
Right? So it seems like your experiences, the framing you got from your father, this epiphany that you have in terms of being purpose-driven after Howard.
Being purpose-driven with no purpose.
That's right, but still understanding that there's a compass. There is some purpose to be fulfilled. This allow and excuse me, and this lived experience, this touch and this orientation with Mahatma Gandhi and nonviolence helps you again be at the forefront of a civil rights movement that enfranchises many marginalized people by showing the example of how it is that the violence against black people is just absurd and untenable for a country that prides itself in being in democracy.
There's something I've been playing with recently that I'm not trying to burden you with it, but I am. Reverend Forbes used to pastor Riverside Church.
Yes, sir.
Said, there's one question we as black people have got to live with. Were we sold were we sent? And he has a sermon about Joseph in his coat of many colors, and his brothers get jealous and they sell him into slavery. But Joseph didn't. Joseph didn't see himself. Well, one, he didn't hate his brothers. Mm-hmm. He kind of figured this was for some purpose, and he ends up saving Egypt from a famine and saving his family.
Yes, sir.
And forgives everybody. There is power in forgiveness and redemption that you don't have in other ways. And I have never worried about, I mean, I've always seen racism as white folks' problem. And it's not my problem. See, and it does not affect me. They cannot stop anything we want to do. And if I can jump, when Martin Luther King came back from the Nobel Prize, we went to see Lyndon Johnson, and we go in there, and he made us wait about almost 3 hours because the Vietnam folk had him cornered. And so when I got in the Oval Office, he was really depressed. And he just apologized. He said, I know we need a Voting Rights Act, but I just don't have the power. And there's no way I can go back to Congress, see. And we sit there and very polite and listen to him apologize and plead for patience. And I was getting frustrated, and we leave, and I say to Dr. King, well, what are we going to do? I said, he's right. He doesn't have the power. We need to take a sabbatical. We ain't got no money. We got, we need to get ourselves together. He said, no. I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, we're going to get the president some power. I said, huh? And that is the only time I kind of got a little upset with him. I said, you Morehouse man. I said, they say you can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much. I said, can't tell you a damn thing. See, you here 5 feet 6 inches tall, and you got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, and you gonna get the president some power. That is the most arrogant thing I've ever heard you say. And I was provoking him, and he wasn't paying any attention to me. He just kept saying, no, we got to find a way to get the president some power. See? And what I see now and what I saw a little later was I was thinking politically, economically, socially. I was thinking of human power. He was thinking of spiritual power. 2 days after we get back, Mrs. Amelia Boynton shows up in our office on Auburn Avenue with 2-3 preachers and tells us what's going on in Selma. And he says, well, we can come over there to help you right after New Year's. And before the end of March, in 90 days, we had mobilized enough power to pass the 65 Civil Rights Act. See? And that was the clearest way I realized that he was operating almost completely at a spiritual level. And I was trying to be practical, political, something which was irrelevant. people like Fannie Lou Hamer in Mississippi, Amelia Boynton, they possessed a kind of spiritual power that he was plugging into. And I'm thinking about money and votes, and that's not where that's not where his world operates.
So I'm curious.
Let me put one more thing on it.
Help us.
Because that's not the way the Morehouse world operates. See, that the things that the reason I asked to do this was it disturbs me that folk don't understand that Martin Luther King and Maynard Jackson were spiritual geniuses. Mm-hmm. See, how did this? Both of them went to Morehouse at 15, mm-hmm. and both of them were kind of goof-offs, you know. And yet they tapped into a reality that few people understand. Now, a couple of years ago, a group called me and asked me would I come over and do something on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X for Martin's birthday. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, I'll come over and do something on Martin Luther King. I said, but you all have a way of equating Martin and Malcolm that I don't like. I said, I'll come back on May 19th because mm-hmm. I knew Malcolm before I knew Martin in some ways. And we can talk about Malcolm, but let's get a sound understanding of what happened to Martin Luther King at this place, because that's what's happening to you.
We talk about this spiritual power that Martin King Jr. had, Maynard Jackson had, that was cultivated in this special place that's Morehouse College. We talk about how on one end you're talking about this spiritual power that seems very, very clear from Dr. King, right? This kind of moral imperative of why it is that you treat black people like humans, because they are as much, obviously. And then you talk about Maynard Jackson, who was able to build a city, build an airport with no money. As soon as he gets elected mayor, from what I understand, he's like, okay, how come black folk aren't on these boards at banks? You guys got to figure that out. So
that was after he got the money for the airport.
Okay. So, but how does the building of and I want to give our students an opportunity to ask questions next, please. But how does, and because Cody, I'm getting ready, ask all your questions. How does, how does developing business, how does having an airport, how does that enfranchise black folk? How does that, what's the translation there?
Well, the translation is that Jesus says, if you want to get into heaven, you got to feed the hungry. Well, he doesn't mean pass out sandwiches on the corner, have a soup kitchen. I mean, you've got to structure an economy that you generate wealth. And so the individualist, pietist Christian approach to the economy is individual, and you're doing something to save your soul. See, I don't know where it is, but the Apostle Paul talks about dealing with principalities and powers. And I say that what we did with Wall Street was deal with the principalities and powers and figure out how to generate wealth. Now, what Maynard did that was unique, he wouldn't sell the bonds to an all-white company. If you didn't have blacks on your board of directors, if you didn't have black vice presidents who can make decisions, we moved on. So he integrated he integrated Wall Street. But you won't see that in a single economics textbook. It always upset white people that when we brought all this money in, we decided who got it. And we started out with 25% going to black businesses, moved it up to 35%, 45%, 50%, just somewhere around 50-50 now. But that's, I don't have any idea. I know that Maynard, the first thing that Maynard brought was $400 million. That's $500 million back to get the airport started. Maynard plugged so many people into the financial world, and most of them don't remember it, and don't understand how that happened. And that's why I want to help you see that there's something going on here that I'm afraid even the professors don't understand. Because they went to schools, they didn't go to schools where a black man could make a $400 million decision. But they educated somebody here who's making major decisions, see? And I'm very defensive about this because when they tried to name the street out in front of the chapel, Maynard Jackson Boulevard or something, right? It was just after I was mayor. There were people who complained about it, and they weren't interested in that. They didn't want to change the addresses. And I just thought that it's a shame if Morehouse College does not understand the spiritual process that makes this school great. And the best way to understand it is to understand as much as you can about Martin Luther King, Maynard Jackson, and my interloping in between them. Jimmy Carter would not have been the president of the United States if Dr. Gloucester had not given him an honorary degree. And nobody paid any attention to Jimmy Carter because he talked funny. He talked like a Georgia cracker. But what we saw, and Gloucester in particular, he was saying we got to find an easier way to register voters. We shouldn't be fighting about registering to vote. We should be way behind that. And so Jimmy Carter did an executive order deputizing every high school principal in the state as a voter registrar. And you couldn't get out of high school in Georgia without being a registered voter. And it got no publicity, see? But there were lots of little things like that going on, and Gloucester wrote them up and put them inside the Maroon Tiger?
Yes, sir.
And put it in the charter where he gave Jimmy Carter the honorary degree. And people kind of got mad with him because he got up and said, I intend to be the first Morehouse man to be president of the United States. And people laughed. And he said, but I promise you I won't be the last. Okay. And I took copies of that citation all over the country, because every Morehouse man in the country had it. See, and I could refer them to that, and that's one of the ways we mobilize the votes. And there's almost no significant city in America that doesn't have some of your graduates that are there living a respectful, contributing life and making a difference for their communities.
Well, my name is Jared, and I just wanted to know, as a person who obviously fulfilled, great purpose, what advice do you have for somebody I feel like we're all basically in your shoes before you knew your purpose. Like, what advice do you have for somebody in this stage of our lives trying to find our purpose?
Okay, I can answer that one quickly. Just seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added to you as well. But the answers to your problems and the direction are within you. Mm-hmm.
Well, good evening again. My name is Douglas Burnett.
And that's where God is. The Bible talks about still small voice within. Gandhi learned from Jesus and Tolstoy. Tolstoy has a little book, The Kingdom of God is Within You. And that's not like War and Peace, but just a little thing. And you got a lot of wisdom in that.
All right, my name once again is Cody Harris. So after having the chance to kind of hear you talk about, being present during the civil rights era, being mayor, you were around like a lot of successful black male leadership. And I think it can be said for everyone in this room, we're all aspiring black leaders, young black male leaders. What do you think is the most defining characteristic for like successful leadership that you've seen from yourself, Maynard Jackson, Dr. Martin Luther King?
I just want to say thank you for coming out. My name is Javon Ashman, and my question is, you mentioned spiritual genius, specifically Maynard Jackson and Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was just curious, how do you think the spiritual genius, spiritual intellect ties into...
Slow down a little bit.
Slow down?
Clear that up a little bit. It's kind of blurred in the mic.
So, this is a bit better?
Go ahead.
So, how would you say spiritual intellect, spiritual genius ties into the mystique or the energy of Morehouse, and how that creates great leaders, how that creates successful leaders that are, revolutionary?
Good evening. My name is Kenny Zamore. A question I have is, I feel like a couple questions were geared towards just aspects and qualities of leadership. But my question is, when it comes to making a critical decision as a leader, what dimensions of that decision are you, I would guess, say most pertinent about for you to actually make that call of action?
I didn't get the last part.
What aspects of making a decision that may be deemed critical, I would say, sticks the most?
Okay. But my inclination is that these decisions are made for you. I don't think Martin did not want to be Martin Luther King. He went to Montgomery to get away from civil rights leadership and politics. And he wanted to be a simple country preacher. And what you see is he is a 26-year-old, and you hear in that first speech almost all of the themes that you later see in the March on Washington, Nobel Prize speech, everything else he's done. And you realize that, and I don't think he was a good student. In fact, Sam Williams made Coretta mad by saying, you know, we didn't consider Martin one of our better students. But well, there was something going on in his life.
So how does that, and I think that's a through line that's been, you know, that you've communicated to us and that our students are interested in, is this, in what you've started off with, is this calling, for lack of a better word, this mystique that exists at Morehouse, this special place that you said that some professors are not even aware of. How do we maintain that, and what is it? I mean,
I don't know. That's why I asked Dr. Adams to just let me do some of this, like this with you all, because I think it's for you to figure out, and for you to institutionalize. But like I was with down at Google just before I came here, and I don't know what they're doing down there. It didn't make any sense at all to me, but I know I can ask my phone where I am and it can find me. And I also know that I can look up stuff. And I tell that to people all the time, particularly my grandchildren and children, that I was at Howard University. If I wanted to find out something, I used to have to get on the bus and ride down to the Library of Congress and stand in line and wait for a book. And I'd get the book and maybe be able to read it a half hour, and then I had to give it back because the library was closing. See? Now you got something in your pocket. You got the whole world in your pocket. And you have access to so much information. See? But the distinction I'm making is that there's a difference between information and meaning. And so I've been trying to lead you all toward the meaning of your life and your life experiences. And it's not just what you know and what is right and wrong and true and false. It's what meaning you attach to it and how much of your spiritual existence are you willing to commit toward it? Because information in your mind, you know, like being on Jeopardy or something, you know. But what I've been talking about with your predecessors is their ability to mobilize information so that it changes the world.
and that's what their responsibility is.
Yeah.